stages and doing TV and radio and coaching people. And basically the piece that I want to bring to the table is always that deeper thinking, the idea of, well, if the usual standard received wisdom isn't working for me, why is that? Is it because I'm not disciplined enough? Is it because I'm not lazy enough? Is it because there's something inherently wrong with me? And the answer is always, no, it's because it's something else. There's a different way that it needs to be looked at, and here's why. So I like to kind of get in there, and it's almost like doing a Rubik's Cube. And a lot of people find it just very different the way that I speak. I'll get up on a stage and I just teach. I don't sort of do the, you know, as you know, you've seen me speak several times. I don't just get up and sort of do a talk and then just go away and think, okay, great, I've done my talk. I'm constantly learning and then teaching from the stage and coaching live from the stage in order to make sure that we've got a really authentic experience happening, that it actually works. Because for me, if it doesn't work, if you don't get your result, if you don't feel better, if you're not expanding, if you're not making your dream come true, then that's on me. And I take that really, really seriously.
And when it comes down to learning, because you've been on a long journey. I mean, you started a long time ago, and you've trained and taught yourself so many different kinds of disciplines. So obviously you're just I get it. I appreciate we're all ongoing projects. You know, we are evolving. Obviously what you thought quite a few years ago is very different to what you teach today. What is different? What is it that is relevant to you now and you teach and you share?
The biggest thing isn't about particularly about the content of what's being taught. I think there's a lot of really good stuff being taught out there that will always be relevant. Just looking at, you know, how do I feel about things? What's my brain doing? What are my goals? What do I want in life? So those things are kind of constant. And the bit for me that I get really excited about are things like the advances in neuroscience over the last 17 years since I've been in this industry. And now we're now understanding, you know, why is it that these things happen? We're not just like, well, you know, sometimes you feel like it, sometimes you don't. We're able to actually track, well, you know what, there's a thing that's either happening or not happening with our dopamine in our brains. There's a thing that's either happening or not happening with the serotonin. There's a thing that's happening or not happening when it comes to this and that. Like we can actually see in the brain, why is it working or why is it not working? And that gives people a really great confidence around that, oh, I can make this happen. And I think that within that set of neuroplasticity, the way that the brain changes all the time, the way that it can advance, within that, the thing I'm most excited about is a thing called LPT, long-term potentiation. And that shows us that we often have to do something and condition it in for way longer than we would expect in order for it to work. But usually, long before it starts working, people give up. It took me a long time to learn how to comfortably make sales, to learn how to speak about, hey, I've got this really great product. I teach people, this is awesome. You know, I found that so difficult. It was such a long journey for me. But now I understand why it eventually happened and why it took so long. And this is really heartening for people who have any area of their lives where they feel like they are way behind. Like maybe it's to do with their body, maybe it's to do with their relationships, maybe it's to do with the money that they're making or not making, maybe it's to do with how people are reacting to them, maybe it's to do with something like having the ability to get up on a stage and speak. No matter what it is, once we understand about a concept like long-term potentiation, we just know that it just means that we're not there yet. And we can find all kinds of cool ways to speed that up, or at least stay patient in the process, because that is the key. The people who give up and they just say, I've been doing this for 2 years, I've been trying this for 3 years, it's just not working. You know, how do you know? Let's look at what is working. Let's look at, are you feeling differently? Has anything changed? What else is available to you now that wasn't available to you before? What else, what do you know now that you didn't 3 years ago? And be able to sit patiently in those new spaces and know that it is working, that our brain is changing, that also the world is changing too. And it's changing in a way that can often facilitate what we want a lot more easily. Like when I started out 17, 18 years ago, the internet couldn't do this, for example. So we've got to remember that, you know, if we have a feeling of it's not working, that's just a feeling, and feelings are not facts.
And why do you think that? Because obviously now, as you said, with the internet, social media, we're looking for instant and constant gratification, whereby we need to be communicating, we need to be checking our phone, we need instant results, we want short messages. Why is it that people obviously can't see that bigger picture of, like, you know, putting the hours in, putting the work in, and staying strong and resilient? Why do you think that is?
Because there's no guarantee. And if people actually knew, anytime I get someone to a new place, and it might take 2 years to get someone from having never spoken on a stage to speaking on a really big stage and being known for that. It might take 3 years to get them to a point where they become financially free, or even longer. And then when we get them there and we look back and I ask them, if you had known, if you'd had your own certainty, I mean, thank you for borrowing mine, but if you'd had your own certainty during those sort of dim parts of the journey, would you have done things differently? And they all say yes, that they would have made more phone calls. And these were people who were rocking it, who were really going for it. But when we feel like it might not happen, our brain tries to protect us. So it's not a thing that's wrong with us. It's not a thing that's broken. It's actually our brain trying to protect us by saying, you know, don't expend all this energy for something that might not exist. So it's not going to, you know, our old brain, you know, millions of years ago, wouldn't have thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago at least, wouldn't have sent us off to go hunting unless it believed that there were animals there. And in the same way, we're not going to go in search of something unless we know that there's going to be some kind of reward that's going to be worth it. Because sometimes we know that we're going to get some kind of reward. We might get a little bit extra, but is that going to be worth all the extra effort that we put in? And so, you know, that really is key, is to know that those feelings of despondency, those feelings of, you know, oh, gosh, I just don't think this is ever going to happen for me. That's your brain trying to protect you. And you need to be able to speak back to it and go, okay, thanks for that. And actually there's a plan and you don't have the references yet. But this does work, because things always work. They always do. Maybe not in exactly the way that you expect, but you always get to a certain point. I had one client who, she wanted to get a book out. She's from Australia. She wanted to get her book out. And she had written the book, and for ages, no one was taking it. And then eventually she just went to another seminar and she heard one thing. And that kind of just tweaked her thinking around the way she was presenting herself in the book in a quite defended kind of way. And instead, she just started to go in and talk to people, talk to different publishers, saying, you know what, this is why you need to bring this book out. And very quickly, within a couple of months, she got a publishing deal. Within a year, she'd sold 30,000. And these are the stories that we need to keep telling, not just in order to say to people, hey, here's this rare person over there that this freak thing happened to, but to say, you know what all these people have in common is that they stayed in the arena. They stayed with the game diligently and constantly kept rising a little bit higher every day. It doesn't have to be something earth-shattering, but it does have to be working on yourself, learning something, discovering something else, making another connection. And that when we do that, the results always come. It's not a lottery. Success, the whole success game, like the things that we talk about, it's not a maybe. You are going to succeed. You are going to succeed, but you have to, you know, keep asking the questions around, and what else is there? What might I be missing? Who else could help me here? And that is staying in the arena. Staying in the arena isn't just, you know, sitting back and you know, reworking your materials and maybe having a couple of phone calls. It's really being in there and getting curious. And when we stay curious and we stay in the arena, it does happen.
Well, I think one of the things you were saying, or you obviously used the word think, and that's one of the things that I normally share on a very basic kind of level. There's so many people that read so many things, so many books, which is great, and obviously attend all these courses and download these podcasts, and you see many of them. It's like Groundhog Day, you know, that they're literally in the same place 1, 2, 3, 4 years later. And it's down to, I just think it's so essential and so basic that people just don't know how to think. And And it's simply the quality of the thoughts. What thoughts do you have? What questions are you asking yourself? And are you thinking the right things? And sometimes you can see people very confused, but it is that, isn't it? It's down to be able to think the right things and obviously have a clear objective, a clear vision of what you want, and then go for it.
You're so right. That's absolutely key. Critical thinking, good, clear thinking. And a lot of people think they're thinking, but really the thoughts have them. They're not having the thoughts. They're just kind of hamster wheeling through these things that just keep landing. And it's the part of your brain, the more emotional part of your brain is trying to get you to pay attention. So it sort of says, do this and worry about this, and anxiety kicks in. And it's been proven now. There's a really brilliant guy who I follow. I'm so excited to meet him next year. A guy called Robert Sapolsky, and he talks about how it is actually impossible for our prefrontal lobes to be activated. This is the bit that does the executive functioning, that does that thinking that you're talking about. It's impossible for that to be activated when we are just absolutely, let's call it, drowning in anxiety. So, when your hypothalamus is sending signals through to your pituitary gland saying, hey, we got to get anxious here, we got to just get all full of cortisol, we've got to do this, and then you just end up like with your shoulders up around your ears and not enjoying your day. This was like, people say to me, oh, well, that movie in that book, The Secret, that wasn't real, was it? And I'm like, well, yeah, but a lot of people don't know why. And this is why. It's because when we're in this state of anxiety, a state of being on high alert, being overly conscientious, we can't actually do that critical thinking in order to make our lives better. And there are so many people who, are just in that reactive state all the time. So it's about taking yourself out of that reactive state and being able to, for some people, it's about doing yin yoga and just being able to just teach the system what it feels like to be calm. Because there are many people who had tough childhoods or who had overstimulated childhoods who just don't know what it's like to have a body that's calm. They're just constant. Their body is constantly armoring. The muscles are constantly tensing. The mind is constantly racing, looking for danger. But just also to add something to what you said about people who 2-3 years in and they haven't got any further on down the road. Whenever someone says something to me like, "Oh, Judymay, I really loved your YouTube videos," or I saw you on stage last year, I thought you were amazing. I'll always ask them this question. I'll say, "Great, thank you for that. Now tell me 3 things that you actioned based on something that I said." And if they can do that, I'll know that they really got it, that it clicked for them. And if they can't, I'll say to them, okay, the next time you hear me speak, I want you to come up to me afterwards and have 3 things, or flash it to me when I'm on the stage. Show me 3 things that you're going to do differently, having heard what I've said. Because it's not just about, nice sounding information to make you think that, oh yeah, maybe one day, or hey, that's interesting. I mean, I'm not like your alternative to Netflix. I'm not just about you being able to escape into some other place for half an hour or an hour. I'm about, getting in there with you and doing the work. And if I can't physically be there with you, or if you're not checking in with me once a week, then, you have to do that. You have to be that. And it's about making the decision and committing to being that for yourself.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of note takers in seminars and events. There's loads of those. I don't know where these notes go. It's like people saying, I'm busy. Everyone's busy. Everyone's busy.
Everyone's busy. But the thing is as well, though, that at least with the note takers, I know that there is an opportunity. So I usually...
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that do take notes and then...
And what happens to them. And so what I normally do is I'll normally invite them to, I'll sort of say, make sure that you schedule some time a week from today where you review these notes. Certainly, as you know, in workshop situations, we have a lot more time. And I do about 20 minutes at the end of every workshop where we're all about, and what are you going to do to make sure that you retain this information? Because if it's not, revisited, as we know, repetition is the key to long-term memory. And if we're not kind of just revisiting the work, as you say, then it's just going to go. 90% of it plus disappears within the first 10 days if we don't revisit it. So it's absolutely vital.
That's amazing. Well, I was going to ask you a couple of other questions, but now that you were just talking about teaching, now the way that you teach is so engaging. As you said, I've seen you a couple of times on stage, and man, you put your sleeves up and you just get on
Really?
there and you just hand it out left, right, and center. Everyone is so engaged with you, and then they're just all there in awe of you, and they just can't leave you. What is it for you when it comes down to obviously there's many ways you engage in many ways with people, and we'll talk about that later, but what is it for you about going on stage live, speaking to people? How does it make you feel, and why is it special in any way, if it is?
It's really special because this is going to sound so corny, but it's as close as you can get to giving them a hug. And a lot of the first thing that people need is they need reassurance, kind of just like, I know you're tired. I know you're sad. I know you're frustrated. I know you're disappointed. I know that, you know, you might have got taken out at the knees. I know that this is new for you. And you, like, when you're in front of someone live, you can really give them that reassurance just with a look. They get it. I love the phrase by Emerson, use what words you will. You can only ever speak that which you are. And when you show up on a stage, people get that you're there for them, that you really, really want for them to win, and that you're there over the long term. You're not just going to say a few cute things and then run off stage, that you're going to listen to them, that if they've got questions, they can ask it, that if, you know, if they're too shy to put their hand up in the room, then, or if I don't have time to get to them, then they can come up afterwards, and that I'm there. I think that's the primary thing, is they get that you're actually there. Because there are some people, and you would have seen this as well, there are some people who are live and they're speaking live, and they might as well not be, for all the
Yeah.
engagement. Like they really like might as well not be there. But again, you know, if we look to, you know, what the brain tells us about this, there's two awesome things that happen when you have actual eye contact, like face-to-face eye contact with someone. The first thing is that it affects the cerebellum, and that's to do with sort of body movement, and it's connected with this feeling of directedness, so that it kind of holds our attention. So that only comes through actual eye contact, that kind of attention. Because as much as someone might be engaging with the materials, when you're actually physically on stage and they're looking at you, you're looking around at them and they're looking right back at you. It affects that part of the brain in the way that says to them, in a very real way, wake up. This is important. You are here right now. And that allows all kinds of other cool stuff happens. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor gets kicked off. You actually learn better and you retain it better, and you get more excited about it. You're more present. And here's another cool thing. The other thing that happens, and this happens even before I'm going around hugging everyone afterwards, is that oxytocin kicks in. Oxytocin is this really cool hormone. They call it the bonding hormone. And that happens, again, when you are present with someone and they have that eye-to-eye contact. That can't happen in that same way. And so people get, for want of a better phrase, like the warm fuzzies in a really, really big way. And as we know, it's the emotional component. So if they're feeling like, wow, this is important, okay, I'm on this. And they also have this great flood of warmth, flowing between both of you, then that's what makes them, really feel engaged with it. That's what lets them know that, this is my life. It's on now. And that's why people generally, sign up to do the different courses that I run, the online courses. They sign up at events, usually because they're like, oh, finally, oh yes, I know what I need to take action now. It's not just a nice idea in the back of their head, that it can remain for a long time when people are just doing it through the internet and through books.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way, and there's something like that. There's nothing like sitting down and sitting down as a delegate, and you've done it yourself. It doesn't matter how much we think we know. I've never sat in a seminar room listening to someone where I've learned something. I might have learned what not to do, but but 9 out of 10 times I'm learning something. There's always a golden nugget. There's always a bullet point. There's always something that is inspirational. The way that they say the stories, the way that the people engage. For me, there's nothing like it. And then obviously as a speaker, having that opportunity to be able to engage with people, and then when you say something that's meaningful and you can feel, because especially if the passion is coming from you, you can feel that passion coming back. There's nothing. I love it. But you, Judymay, you're so versatile. You've done so many things, and you still do so many things. So radio, you've done TV. Obviously, you're a writer and author with your books. You're now writing poetry. What makes you and how you're so versatile? What is that something that you do intentionally, or just something that you're just curious? You've always been a curious mind.
I've just always been curious, always just wanted to live every part of life, just to go everywhere. And yeah, so usually if I love something, I'll just keep doing it even after I pick up something else. So I'm on BBC Radio about every 2 weeks. That's one of my favorite things to do. In fact, now my new house is just right, like a 5-minute walk to Portland Place, the BBC Centre. I'm not a huge fan of TV. I must admit, I go on TV, particularly if I'm promoting a book or if I'm just newly arrived in a city and I'm doing a talk there. I will do TV. It's not my favorite thing to do. Radio, you can kind of go deeper, and on TV, usually you've got 3 minutes, and plus I'm Irish, and so I have to go and get a tan every time I want to go on TV. Otherwise, I look like someone who's really ill and raising money for a good cause. So well, just, you know what I do love about both radio and TV, particularly radio, is that I get to reach people that normally wouldn't have the sophistication to come to an event. So, and that's a good thing about events, that there's a certain level of people are at a certain place. They usually have some kind of disposable income where they can, buy products, buy coaching. They usually have a certain standard of education, so you can sort of talk in a more nuanced way. But then what I love about radio is I get to take care of everybody. And that's where, there'll be someone who will just be sitting there, and maybe the radio is their only friend. And maybe the radio is the only person who showed up that day. And I'm always really careful to make sure that I make statements that will go in. Usually very general statements. As you say, like when I'm on stage, I'm talking super fast, it's very specific. But then when I'm on radio around the world, and radio is really easy to do around the world because you can also do it from your home when you are, I can be sitting in London or Paris, and I can be on the phone to a radio show in New York or Dallas or somewhere. But I really make sure that I say something like, you know what, things do change, things do get better. You know what, it might feel for some people that they're alone right now, but you're not. It might feel like it's too late, it's never too late. And just those very general statements that usually I don't have time to back up because, a caller is called in and we're doing something else. But the amount of times that I have come across people who've said, oh, you know what, my dad loves listening to you, or I was having a hard time and you said this and it was 5 years ago and it really, really helped me. So just, I feel like the more information I have and the more I live that information, the more useful I am. I just like being useful. That's really it.
Well, you're very useful, very, very useful. And one of the things, obviously, that we theme in these webinars is the interest of many people, or not everyone necessarily, but there's an interest of a lot of people, especially if they are in the personal professional growth business industry of going global. And it's something that, I tell people, listen, we're all global. The moment you've got social media and you're posting on Instagram, someone's seeing it somewhere in the world. So you've obviously, you've lived and live in many countries. It's very difficult to catch up whether you in Paris, are you in LA now? But you spend a lot of time in LA. So obviously you've always been a global figure. Why? What's your thoughts regarding being global and going global? And having come back from the US, I think I shared with you last time, I really got to understand how being a US citizen means that I might be in the East Coast for breakfast, but I'll be having dinner in the West Coast. And I just jump on a plane. And here, if we're going to Paris, on the Eurotunnel, we think we're actually going out on a long trip. So this whole globality things, and I really found that a lot of the Americans are desperate. They all love to come over to the UK, to Europe. So what's your thoughts regarding going global, and what steps did you take, and what steps would you suggest if someone wants to do that?
Well, I guess I've always been global in that when I was a really little girl, my dad was a doctor for British Airways. And we lived until I was 8 right beside Heathrow Airport, and we used to get discounted flights. So in the 70s, when, hardly anybody was going on, 4 foreign holidays a year, we were doing that. So I had already been to lots of different countries, so it didn't seem so strange to me. And then we kept doing that, like even after we moved to Ireland. And then when I was in college, I was in the summers. I remember going and studying dance on Broadway in New York, and just insisting on the adventure. And I visited quite comprehensively, not just kind of for the day, but I've visited 50 different countries now at this point, and a few more that I want to go to this year. And just sort of knowing that you're going to be safe and that you're going to learn something. That's always how I've done it. It's something different. It's a way to just wrap yourself around very different ways of being, very different ways of experiencing the world. It sort of opens you up. So, for example, I really love Japan. And in Japan, they're very much about the collective. And I always thought, because I was such an individualist, I always thought that thinking collectively was a weakness. And then I go there and I see the absolute beauty of it. And I understand, being interdependent in a very, very different way. Or, for example, I used to do seminar safaris in Kenya. So I'd bring people to Kenya, and we would we get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I made it like a whole adventure, and we would have this big sunrise meeting and some sort of a ritual, and then we'd have I'd be teaching out in the Masai Mara for 2 hours while the sun was coming up. And you know what? That's living to me. It's like, what? Like, and then I remember one time I came back from somewhere. I think it was Morocco, and I had a really good time. And I'd been riding these Arabian horses around the desert, and I'd been just having all these really cool adventures. And I got back, and the taxi driver then was taking me from Heathrow into central London, and he goes, "Oh, a once in a lifetime trip." And I was there thinking, no, that's just this week. That's not once in a lifetime. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So I was blessed with this idea of the world being accessible to me. But then that then changes when you start working in different parts of the world, because I used to live in Kathmandu, used to live in Paris. But then when you go into work, I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to listen. You have to listen to what is it that they want. So the first times I started speaking in Scandinavia, particularly in Norway, I asked people, I said, what is it that people want? And they said, well, they want to be respected. They don't want you to arrive on stage as if you know it all. And so the very first thing I said when I got on the stage was, hey, listen, because I could relate to that. I'm like, wow, I don't. You know what? This, me up here teaching you, that's just geography. That's just now. Every single person, there's something that you could teach me, and I really respect that. Also, I don't want you just to believe me just because I'm up here on the stage. I want you to go and I want you to research it for yourself. I want you to try it for you. And in that moment, they were all kind of like, okay, great. So that's the first thing you got to do is, I'm not in a manipulative way. You've got to make sure it resonates with you. So you're not like, what do they need to hear? And I'm going to regurgitate that just to, get these suckers. It's not that at all. It's just, finding out where are they at? What's going on? Finding out, what's happening here. So if you're speaking in, I've spoken all around the States and done TV shows all around the States. And, if you're speaking in South Carolina, that's very different from if you are speaking in Boston, Massachusetts, or it's very different from if you're speaking in San Francisco. So I think it really trains you how to leave your presumptions at home and to really learn how people are different. And then that makes me a stronger coach as well, because sometimes I'm with someone, I'm like, oh, you know what, even though they live in Birmingham, UK, they actually have a very Dubai sensibility. Or just because they are in Australia, they actually aren't like a lot of Australians. They're actually a lot more Irish in their way of being. And so it just yeah, you know what, that was a really rambling answer to your question. But I guess the thing is that the world excites me. And there's just so much. I just see it as this great big gift that I get to unwrap all the time. And it's available. Everybody can see it.
Sorry, there's a bit of a lack delay there. No, what I was going to say is that I think that's what's needed now. I also think that the idea of traveling and engaging with new communities and new environments, even if it's just simply getting out of your office, I just think we spend far too much time behind a screen behind a laptop in a closed office.
Or in the Groucho in my case.
Well, or in Groucho in your case. And what's needed is more that face-to-face engagement, and talking to people and meeting people and building relationships. That's why I love the whole concept of live events, because it's just a massive, amount of people all joining forces there. You can feel the energy. I mean, you feel the energy when you go to these places. And that's one of the things that I think is so appealing and interesting of traveling and going global, is to explore, as you said, to learn new things.
And it's a big filter as well, because if you're going into a city like Miami, there are millions of people. But if you then are just getting the people in Miami who are interested in learning and interested in living a better life and interested in, as you would say, building their legacy and living from that place of legacy, then, it's a great filter. And you're going to get those people, and you don't have to talk to 100 people before you get someone who's outrageously awesome. They're all right there for you. I love that aspect of it too.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Now, I wanted to ask you, and I will share your webpage and your information in a minute. What are you working on now, Judymay? Because it's just very difficult to keep up with you. You've always got a new program, some new training, your new book. What are you up to now?
At the moment, we only just started a new master coach training, and it's different because it's purely about content. A lot of people are like strategy this, strategy that, strategy the other. But the great thing is that when your content is awesome, people want you. When you're saying things that are different, when you've gone deeper, when you're not like everybody else, then that is highly magnetic. It's like who was it said? Steve Martin, the performer. He said, be so good they can't ignore you. And that's what I always encourage speakers and coaches to do. Here's how to be so good. Get the latest information, go deeper on it, learn how to cross-reference it, learn how to build your own models. Go back through history. As you know, I'm a huge philosophy buff. And so, I will be teaching people using Aristotle, using Marcus Aurelius, using Thomas Aquinas, using just like anybody, Descartes, like being able to do that, it kind of just gives you a whole orchestra. So you're not just trying to make a big sound on one instrument.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think I lost you there, the last bit. Are you still there? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I am, absolutely. Just basically, it is just it's for highly curious people. I'll tell you the people who don't like me, and there are some, and they really let me know.
I don't believe that.
No, it's true. The people who need to be fed very distinct pieces of information and not much of them. So if you're the kind of person who likes to be told this one thing, this one thing, this one thing, and just go away with that and nothing else, I will drive you crazy, because you'll end up with 100 things, and then you'll have to go and you'll have to sort out which ones are useful for you, which ones aren't. So I think it's important to manage expectations, but I'm not for everybody, but I am for the people who are really curious and really love learning and are very creative, who love taking one thing and another thing and finding a way to produce something brand new from the amalgamation of those two original things.
No, you're a great teacher, and you're a great coach. So you're working on this new program now. Anything else? I know you mentioned about your book. That's going to keep you busy for the winter. But what else are you working on?
So I won't say too much about that, because I want to, I'll tell you about it next time we're sitting down for a cup of tea.
Okay.
But that's something that, it's really, really awesome. In fact, it was going to be one thing, and now suddenly over the last week, it's just got way bigger. So I'm a little bit like, oh my goodness. But that's really exciting. And also another thing that I work with a lot is I work with women who are codependent, and success for codependent women. We have a thing every Sunday. It's by invitation only, but if someone, if you feel that it's for you, please do get in contact with us. It's a small group of women, about 30 women, and it's all about how, when you're an overgiver, when you overgive and you don't know how to receive, how do you succeed? How do you get over that conditioning? Where did it come from? Why do things hurt so much? Why are you always feeling sort of last on the list, last on your own list very often? And I really get so much joy out of that, because you have people who have such good hearts, but they're not building anything for themselves, and they're starting to get scared. And just being able to bring them into a place of saying, you know what, you still get to be a good person, you still get to give, But first of all, you look after yourself and you look after your own experience. You don't allow toxic, narcissistic, and awful people in. And you don't allow people to take their experience of the world and tell you that that should be your experience. So it's really, really important stuff. I think that, you know, 'cause I know you're big into legacy. That's probably my legacy, is teaching the more gentle people, the more artistic people, and the people who are more easily hurt, and making sure that they get their due as well, that they don't just kind of work to build other people's dreams, which a lot of people are doing.
Yeah, you're empowering in a big way. Well, thank you, Judymay. So what I'm going to do now is just very quickly, I will share the web pages in a minute. I'll show where you can find Judymay and if you're interested. But look, ultimately, I think the idea of why people maybe watch these webinars or ultimately attend live events and listen to speakers is because, you know, they want to learn. And I also believe that those that are interested in the business, that go out and help and speak and coach and train people, we do it ultimately because we want to make a difference. And that was kind of what I was sharing with Judymay, literally about leaving a legacy. And ultimately, I think and I believe that we have the obligation to become the best version of ourselves. We have to, you know, everyone should be looking at how can I improve? How can I be better than yesterday? You know, focus on those questions and asking the right questions. You know, what can I do tomorrow that I didn't do today? You know, how can I think better? How can I think differently? How can I help others? So if we do go down that road of making ourselves the best version of ourselves, we're ultimately going to make the world a better place. And what I've been exploring, and this is why we've launched these legacy clubs, is with ultimately the idea of trying to help people understand what that legacy is. And it was very interesting because it was a group of us, 2025, and obviously all sorts of variations on the tables. And someone thought, oh my God, you know, I'm 45 or 47. I've actually never thought what my legacy really is. And you know, he wasn't necessarily entrepreneurial, but then on the other hand, he's a parent. And they were talking about the importance of that ripple effect that they can have just by simply having a phenomenal impact on their kids, so they can look up to them and they can teach them and they can educate them. So leaving a legacy doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be, you know, a New York bestseller or Tony Robbins and help millions of people. We can all help millions of people. And I brought I shared a story that, funny enough, I don't know how, I started watching the Schindler List the other day, which is a very intense film and very sad, but that the film ends in such a beautiful way, in the way that, you know, he was really beating himself up because he thought that he could have saved more, and he was thinking, if I wouldn't have, you know, spent the money on the cars or the alcohol or the drinks, everything that I did, I could have saved another person. And he saved 800, but the effect that he had on 800 people was that the generations after that, literally there was like 4,000 people that lived thanks to him. And I think in Poland that there was only around 2,000 or 3,000 Jewish Poles at that time. So, you know, he had a phenomenal impact with the people that he helped, and we can all have that impact. And I think that's kind of the reason, or part of the reason, why we do what we do. We want to leave a legacy, and I think everyone should.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I wanted to simply now go online. With your permission, I'm going to share the screen. I have, I believe, a page open here, and it's just to simply show you guys how you can find Judymay, and that's judymay.tv.
Oh, it's me.
That's you. That's right. And there, well, you can find, well, obviously anything or a lot about Judymay, and obviously all the courses or workshops she does.
That's me doing my thing.
That's you doing your thing, yeah?
That's not me hanging from a rock. I will say that.
I was looking at that. I was looking at that. But there's Judymay. So obviously, if you're interested in contacting her, we do have, I did interview Judymay in a podcast, which was an interview we did a couple of years ago, which is now live. Judymay spoke at the expo, and those expo talks are going to be, well, they're available on the Best You Online platform, which is now live. You can get your 14-day trial. And also we will hopefully, apart from that, have some content from Judymay in the future. But if not, please, I just recommend you go to her page, connect with her. She is the most friendliest, nicest, sweetest, and
powerful. Is that the next word?
gifted and powerful. gifted and powerful speaker, and you know, she really impacts anyone and everyone she
and anyone, just reach out, even if you don't know why you are. It's info@judymay.tv, and you know, I want to hear from you. You don't have to have a reason. Just I'm here for you. That simple.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually got an email from a client that was at the expo the other day, and she sent us a letter, a catch up of the amazing things that happened at the expo, which was very sweet of her. It was only happened a couple of days ago, and she was telling me that she signed up to one of your courses, and it was one of the best things that she's ever done. So,
Right.
and if anyone hasn't heard of the Best You Expo, my first question is, where have you been? Because the Best You Expo now, we're on to our 4th year. We had around 10,000 people last year. We had 8 breakout rooms, all themed differently. And this year, obviously, we're expecting anything from 15 to 20,000. If anyone wants to get involved in speaking, exhibiting, well, we've got some, you know, we've got all the options there of how you can get involved. We do have the options for free tickets. You've got the floor plan there. So we'll be delighted to see you there, either attending, speaking, or exhibiting. Just make sure you go to thebestyouexpo.com, sidebar UK. So, Judymay, any last words? Anything else you want to share?
Just thank you so much for having me here, and great if we're new to each other. This has been very one directional, so please do introduce yourself. I'd love to know who you are, and please, you know, if you are a speaker or you would like to be, just, you know, keep around the Best You, because they are, in my opinion, just the best platform around the world right now for speakers with high integrity getting up and sharing their stuff and making the world a better place.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. All the best. Take care. Have a lovely day, evening, or wherever you are. Thank you so much. All the best. Bye, Judymay. Thank you, darling. Bye.